The wind came down from the mountains like a living thing that morning, dry and restless, sweeping across the plains of Montana and carrying with it the smell of sage and dust. It rattled the loose boards of the old barn and made the tall prairie grass sway like waves on an endless sea. Eli Tanner stood by the fence line, his hands wrapped around the smooth top rail, his eyes narrowed against the pale light of dawn. The horizon stretched wide and empty before him, a canvas of gold and gray, and the air tasted faintly of rain that would never come. Eli had lived on this land his whole life. 43 years, most of them spent working the same 2,000 acres his grandfather had homesteaded with nothing but grit, mules, and a dream that never quite paid off the way folks hoped. The ranch wasn't big by Montana standards, but it was enough to keep him busy from before sunrise until long after the stars came out. Cattle, horses, and a patchwork of pastureland that demanded everything and gave little back. The locals called him the giant rancher, half in jest, half in respect. At 6'6", with shoulders like a bull and hands like carved oak, Eli looked like he'd been built out of the same earth he worked. But for all his size, he carried himself with a kind of stillness that made folks lower their voices when he walked into a room. He spoke slow, thought slower, and never raised his voice unless he meant to. His life was a quiet one, by choice. He had no wife, no kids, and no real company except for a blue heeler named Whiskey who followed him everywhere, his tail wagging like a metronome. The two of them shared an understanding born from years of silence and work. Out here, words were scarce, the land didn't care what you said, it only cared what you did. That morning started like most others. Eli was loading hay bales into the back of his old Ford truck, the one with rust creeping up its sides like lichen on stone. His gloves were cracked and stained from years of use, his shirt clinging to his back with the first sweat of the day. He'd been up since 4, feeding the horses and checking fences along the west pasture. The sun was still low, spilling weak light through the gaps between clouds, and the air was cool enough to see his breath. He paused for a moment, leaning on the pitchfork, letting his thoughts drift. Out here, time didn't move the way it did in towns. Days bled into one another until the seasons themselves became the only markers. He thought about his father, long gone now, who used to say, "You don't own land, son. You just borrow it from the next generation." Eli had no next generation to borrow it to, and some days that thought felt heavier than the bales he lifted. He was just tossing another one into the truck bed when Whiskey's ears perked up. The dog gave a low, uncertain growl and looked toward the dirt road that cut across the far edge of the ranch. Eli straightened, squinting into the distance. Dust rose faintly against the sunlight, not the kind that came from wind but from movement, small, unsteady movement. He wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped closer to the fence. At first, it looked like a stray calf or maybe a coyote limping along the road. But as it drew nearer, the shape took on the outline of a person. Small, thin, stumbling a little with each step. Eli frowned. Folks didn't walk out here, not unless they were lost or in trouble. The figure came into focus, a girl, no older than 12 or 13. Her clothes were dirty, her hair tangled, her shoes caked in mud. She was walking with a kind of desperate determination, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. When she saw Eli standing by the fence, she stopped dead, then half ran, half stumbled toward him. "Sir," her voice cracked in the wind. "Please, please help me." Eli's instincts kicked in before his mind caught up. He climbed through the fence rails and jogged to meet her halfway. The girl's face came clear now, freckled, tear-streaked, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. "Whoa now," Eli said, holding out his hands, his voice low and steady. "Take a breath, sweetheart. You're safe. What's going on?" She tried to speak, but the words tangled in sobs. She took a few ragged breaths, clutching the fabric of her shirt like she could hold herself together by force alone. They want to hurt my mom," she gasped. "She's sick. They said they're gonna come back. Please, sir, you have to help her." Eli's stomach tightened. "Who's they?" "Men," she said, shaking her head, eyes darting behind her like she expected them to appear any second. "They came in a black truck. Said my mom owed them money for medicine. But she can't pay, she can't even get out of bed. They said they'll come back tonight if she doesn't give them something." Eli felt a slow, simmering anger rise from somewhere deep inside. He'd seen a lot in his life, drought, debt, even death, but there was something about the idea of grown men threatening a sick woman and her child that twisted something sharp in his chest. He crouched so he was eye level with her. "What's your name, honey?" "Lily," she whispered. "All right, Lily," he said, his tone gentler now. "You did the right thing coming here. Where's your place?" She pointed east, toward the rolling hills that framed the far side of his land. "The old Miller house," she said. "We've been staying there. Mom said it used to be somebody's ranch a long time ago." Eli knew the place. It had been empty for years, a sagging farmhouse, a few broken windows, a roof that looked like it was giving up. Folks said it was haunted, though Eli never paid much attention to talk like that. He hadn't realized anyone was living there, much less a sick woman and her daughter. He stood up, towering over her but softening his posture. "All right, let's get you warmed up. You hungry?" She nodded hesitantly. He helped her into his truck, letting her sit up front where the heater could blow on her. Whiskey jumped into the backseat, watching her curiously but quiet. Eli drove back toward the ranch house, gravel crunching under the tires. Inside, he set a mug of hot cocoa in front of her, made the way his mom used to, with too much sugar and a bit of salt to make it rich. She wrapped her hands around it like it was the first warmth she'd felt in days. "Now," Eli said, sitting across from her, "start from the beginning. Tell me what happened." Lily looked down at the cup, her lips trembling. "Mom got sick about a month ago," she said. "She can't get out of bed much. Fever, coughing, she gets dizzy if she stands. I tried to find work in town, but they said I'm too young. We didn't have money for her medicine, so a man said he could help us. He said he'd give me the medicine if I promised to pay him later. But I didn't know what later meant. Last night they came, 2 of them, and they said we owed them triple. Mom said we didn't have it, and they laughed. They said if we don't pay, they'll take the house, or..." She stopped there. Her shoulders shook. Eli's hands tightened into fists on the table. He took a slow breath before speaking. "You remember what the truck looked like?" She nodded. "Black. No license plate in the front. One of the men had a scar right here." She pointed to her cheek. "And the other had a tattoo, something like a snake." Eli nodded once. He knew the type. Not from town, but from the edges of it, the kind who made a living preying on the desperate. "All right," he said quietly. "We're going to take care of your mom. But first, you need to rest a bit. You look about ready to fall over." She shook her head, panic flickering again. "No, I can't stay. They'll come back, if they come back and I'm not there." "Hey," his voice softened again. "You're not alone now. I won't let anyone hurt her, you hear me?" Something in the way he said it, calm, certain, like it was fact instead of promise, made her finally believe him. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. Eli stood, grabbed his coat from the peg by the door, and checked the rifle mounted above the mantel. He hadn't used it for anything but coyotes in years, but habit made him check the chamber anyway. He slung it over his shoulder and grabbed the keys. "Come on," he said. "We're going to see your mom." Lily climbed back into the truck, this time sitting straighter, like she trusted the road ahead. The drive to the Miller property was a rough one, the kind that jostled bones and made the suspension groan. The old farmhouse came into view over the ridge, a sagging structure of gray wood and broken shutters. The wind made the front door creak back and forth like it was sighing. As they pulled into the yard, Eli noticed the tire tracks in the mud, fresh ones, maybe less than a day old. He killed the engine and stepped out, eyes scanning the horizon. Nothing moved except the grass. Inside, the house smelled of sickness and dust. The wallpaper had peeled in long curls, and the floor creaked under his boots. In the back room, under a pile of quilts, lay Lily's mother. She was pale, her breathing shallow, her lips dry and cracked. Eli knelt beside her, feeling the heat of fever radiating from her skin. "Ma'am," he said softly. "My name's Eli Tanner. Lily came to me. We're going to get you help." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then steadying on him. "You didn't have to come," she whispered. "They'll be back." "You shouldn't. They won't be," Eli said simply. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Outside, the clouds were thickening, turning the sky the color of lead. The first low rumble of thunder rolled over the plains. Eli stood and looked out the window toward the distant road. He'd seen storms like this before, the kind that came fast, hard, and with no warning. But this one wasn't just weather. This one had a name, a black truck, and men who thought they could scare a sick woman into giving what she didn't have. And Eli Tanner, the giant rancher, was about to show them what real fear looked like.